Alright, so this is the last part of the chapter. What you've been doing so far this chapter is learning how to solve the quadratic equations. First by factoring it, setting it equal to 0. And then we learned that when you can't factor it, to use the quadratic formula. Okay, so today we're going to get in how to solve it with your graphing calculator. Okay, so you can do things by hand, but here's another way with the calculator. Okay, but the most important thing is this will also tell you how to make the graph of the quadratic equation. Alright, so as we've learned previously, solutions to an equation occur where the graph crosses the x-axis. So all this chapter, when we've been finding the answers, really those answers are the x-intercepts. It's where they cross the x-axis. Okay? So today we'll review how to find an x-intercept using the graphing calculator. Alright? So for our example problem, this is our example problem. Okay, and the thing is, I cannot factor this problem because to multiply to make -7, I can only do -7 times 1 or 7 times -1, and neither of those will add up to 2. So this is an example where I have to use the quadratic equation. Okay, so just to prove how the graphing works, we'll use the quadratic formula first. So I've already got this done for you. So what I've done here is in that quadratic formula, -b plus or minus square root of b squared minus 4ac over 2a. So here you can see I've plugged in my b values, which is positive 2. I've plugged in my a values, which is a 1, and my c is a -7. So this is already set up. This is what it's simplified to, -2 plus or minus square root of 32 over 2. And then remember, you turn this into two separate equations, one with the plus, one with the minus. And finally, our two answers are here. So that's why we can't factor this, because we're not getting whole numbers. We've got these decimals. All right, but these are in fact the answers, and this is just telling us our graph will cross the axis here. Okay, so nothing wrong with using the quadratic formula, okay, to get these answers. But just as another way, we can use the graphing calculator to get to these answers. Okay, so here's how we use the graphing calculator. All right, so step 1. You set the equation equal to 0 and enter it into the Y1 screen in your calculator. So it's in standard form. We're going to type that in. All right. Step 2. You are going to set a second equation. You're going to set the second y equals to 0. Okay. And this is a very important step because what we're really doing here is when we have our graph, okay, if that's my x and my y-axis, okay, what we're really doing is, so let me draw a parabola. Let's say I get a parabola like this for my graph. I'm trying to tell the calculator I need to know these 2 points, where it crosses the x-axis. But this is going to be the first equation. The second equation, we have to tell the calculator that y equals 0. This is y equals 0. It's on the x, basically it's the x-axis. And so remember, like we did in chapter 8, we asked the calculator to tell us where the two lines intersect. And that's what we're going to be doing here. We have to give the calculator 2 lines because we're telling it to find where it intersects here and here. So that's why this is the most important part. If you don't set y equals 0 on the second equation, there won't be 2 lines for the calculator to intersect. Okay? Now once you've got those 2 equations set, you just hit graph and you're going to see your parabola. And then this is just like chapter 8. We're going to go to second calc, which is second trace, and we're going to select number 5, intersect, because we're asking the calculator to tell us where they intersect. Alright, now here, because there's 2 intersecting points, step 5, first thing you're going to do is you're going to move the cursor close to where it's crossing the x. It doesn't have to be exact, but you're just going to get it close, because the calculator is going to get confused as to which one you want. So you just get it close and then enter 3 times and it'll give you this answer. Step 6, you repeat 4 and 5. So then you're going to move the cursor over here and guess at 3. You're going to tell it to find the intersection here. Okay? So let's go ahead and try this example, and just to show that you will get the same answers. Alright? So let's go to our calculator. Go to your y screen. So remember, y1, you're entering the quadratic equation. In this example was x squared plus 2x minus 7. So that's going to be the graph of the parabola, the quadratic equation. Now, we need to graph the x-axis, which is y equals 0. That's always going to be y equals 0, so that we can tell the calculator to find where these two lines are crossing. So we're going to graph it. So there's our first equation. The second equation you're not going to see because the line's going to be exactly on the x-axis. Okay? Now step 4 said we're going to have to find the intersect. So remember, it's second trace, which on the top is the calculate. So we're going to go to second calc or trace. And remember, we're going to find the intersection. So go down to number 5, select intersect. Alright? Now, we're going to do these last few steps 2 times. So, see the cursor's here. Find the blinking thing. And if I just move left, I'm going to go all the way to the left. And I'm going to go close to the intersection. So here's good. It can be over. It can be under. It doesn't really matter. It doesn't have to even be exactly on it. Okay, I'm just going to get it as close as I can. So then you just enter 3 times. Enter, enter, enter. And so look, this is now see the cursor is now directly on the x-axis. So it's telling you it's intersecting at negative 3.8 and 0. And look, that was one of our answers, negative 3.8. Okay, so that's one coordinate. And technically they're writing it like a point because it's the x-axis. Okay, now let's go double check the second one. Alright, now I don't have to go enter everything in. I still have my graph, but I've got to redo the calculate. So once again, hit second calc. And now I've got to find my other intersection. So hit number 5 again. Select it. Now we found this one. Now we're going to move the cursor over to this part. Okay, so use the right button. Cursor's moving over. And all we're going to do is get it as close as we can to the x-axis. Okay, once again, it can be over or under, doesn't matter, as long as it's close. So now we do 3 enters. Enter, enter, enter. And now look, exactly right there. It's telling you this point is at 1.80. And as you can see here, 1.8. Okay, so once again, same thing. Whether you're solving it or graphing it, you're doing the same thing. Okay, so this point is very important. The key point for this is that remember that solutions, zeros, x-intercepts, and roots, they all mean the same thing. So we can do it with the algebra or we can do it with the graphing. The answers, which are the solutions, are the x-intercepts. X-intercepts are zeros or roots. Basically, it all means the same thing. Okay? So, at this point, you're probably good solving it by hand. So here, let's just practice using the calculator. Okay? So, the directions here say find the zeros of the function, round the answer to 2 decimal places. That's how we're going to round it, those long decimals. Okay? Now this one we could factor by hand. Okay? But we'll just practice the calculator. So we're going to first go and enter this first equation. Alright, so let's start that over. So now our first equation is x squared minus x minus 6. Okay, now we already have the y equals 0 for the second one. Okay, now let's graph that. Alright, so here is our graph. So now what we're finding the zeros. The zeros are the x-intercepts. Okay, so we're going to find both points. So remember, second calc, number 5, because we're finding where those 2 lines intersect. Move the cursor close to one of the intercepts. I like just going to the left side first. That's pretty close. Enter, enter, enter. And here we see that's a whole number, negative 2, 0. Alright, so let's go put that for one of the answers. Negative 2, 0. Okay, and then let's go get the other one. Okay, remember we talked about how many solutions there are? There's 2 answers because it crosses 2 places, so I need to get both. So start all over, second calc, hit intersect. Alright, let's move it over to the right side here. Keep clicking, it's pretty close. 3 enters, enter, enter, enter. And now the other point, this is exactly on 3, 0. Okay. Alright, and it's just that easy. Okay. Alright, let's try one more together. So now we're going to take this function f of x, and remember, way back in chapter 3, f of x is the same as y. Basically, it's the same thing as if I were to write it like this. Okay, so it's the same thing as y equals, and that's why we're putting in the y equals screen. Alright, so let's go back to our calculator. Let's go to our y screen. Let's clear this first one out. And now this new equation is 2x squared. 2x squared minus 5x minus 5. And we already have the second one, y equals 0. Always need those two. Let's take a look at the graph. And we can see this should have two answers, two solutions, two roots, because it crosses in two places. So we're going to ask the calculator to find where these are intersecting. Remember, our y equals 0 is right here. So let's go to second calc, or second trace. Go down to number 5. Enter. Alright, remember to move to tell the calculator I want to find the intersection around here. So to move it close to this one, 3 enters. Enter, enter, enter. And here we get negative 0.765. Now remember, the directions said round to 2 decimal places. So that means my answer should have 2 decimals. So I'm going to look at the third one to tell me to round it up or keep it down. The third digit is a 5. That means round this one up 1. So it'll be negative 0.77. Okay, so the first 0 is negative 0.77, comma 0. That's the x and y coordinates. And let's go get the second one. So start over again. Tell the calculator we are going to do second calc, so we can tell the calculator to do the intersection again. Enter. Now we got to move over to the right side. Okay, keep clicking until you get it over there, close. 3 enters. And this point is 3.26. So I want 2 decimal places. Go to the third one. 5 tells me to round this up. So it'll be 3.27, and that's positive. Okay, so it's just that easy. I mean, you might choose to do it that way. I mean, you know how to do it by hand, but this is doing the same thing, just graphically or with a picture. Alright, so do this. Pause the podcast. Try numbers 3 and 4 on your own. Use the calculator. Even if you could factor it, just to practice this strategy. Alright, when you get your answers, unpause it and check your answers. Alright, so for numbers 3 and 4, they both had 2 solutions. You should have gotten these for your answers. Okay? If you didn't, come see me so we can clear up any questions you have. Okay? But this is the end of the first part. The second part, we're going to talk more about graphing and actually making the graph. But this is the first part because we will need these x-intercepts to make the graph. Okay?